Welcome to Entrepreneur Voices, the IEC podcast, where entrepreneurs and business leaders share their insights and success stories. In today's episode, host Renee Oswald sits down with Chad Erikson, a serial entrepreneur, to discuss strategies for scaling, branding, and overcoming entrepreneurial challenges. Let's get started.
Hi, Chad. Welcome to Entrepreneur Voices. We're so glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
How do you feel about being introduced as a serial entrepreneur?
That might be a little sketchy there, a little scary, but I've had my share of businesses and I've had successes and failures, so it's all been good.
Well, that's what we want to talk about today because we want to learn from your successes and failures, and especially for those who are new to thinking about starting a business or entrepreneurs in, whatever part of their journey they're at. We can always learn from each other. So we're glad to have you here today.
Perfect.
Excited to hear your story. So let's go back to, I understand that you were, because you have sold it, the owner of a sports apparel company, but was it your father that started this? Kind of talk to us about all of that.
Correct. My dad's a big influence on this whole thing. My dad was interesting. He was a top salesman for Procter & Gamble back in the early 70s. He didn't finish college. He got a job offer before he finished his business degree at Utah State. And he went to his business professor and said, is this a good idea? And he goes, you're getting paid twice what I'm getting paid. I'd take that job in a second. So anyway,
who cares about the degree?
He sold Procter & Gamble for 10 years. Then he got an offer to come be at Rick's College and start the development, raise the money for the school.
Okay.
So he ran that office for 10 years under President Eyring. He came here when President Eyring came here to the school.
Wow.
So he came here in the mid-'70s. So during that time frame, Diet Center started up in Rexburg.
Yeah, right.
My dad was one of the first ones to jump in and buy Diet Center franchises.
Okay.
And so that's what led him out of the exit from working for the school or the church to where he owned over 100 Diet Centers across the United States.
Wow. Now, people don't probably remember Diet Center.
No.
I mean, that was what, 80s?
70s and early
70s,
80s. And then the Ferguson,
yeah.
then the Ferguson sold it in early 80s, which made the transition to what happened with my dad. He realized when the Fergusons sold, they were the leading dieting program in the United States. They had 3,000 centers across the United States.
Wow.
They sold right at the time when Jenny Craig's and Weight Watchers were coming out.
Okay.
The new company that bought them realized they paid too much for it, raised the prices to where my dad's centers could not compete with the Jenny Craig's and Weight Watchers anymore.
Sure.
So overnight, he felt like he was losing store after store. They were all closing because they couldn't compete anymore.
Oh, my goodness.
He was flying back from a corporate meeting in Pittsburgh when he read about an up-and-coming franchise called Pro Image.
Okay.
It was two brothers in Utah. He went to the mall to find a New York Yankees hat for his son. Couldn't find one and said, there's got to be more people like me that want to buy this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what started the opening days of Pro Image.
Okay.
So my dad landed in Salt Lake, went to their headquarters, said, I'm tired of dealing with people with weight problems that are always grumpy and angry.
Yeah.
Maybe talking sports will be a funner business to go into.
Yeah.
Fell in love with the founders of Pro Image and decided that's something he wanted to do.
Okay, great.
So that's kind of how it came about. He came back, he went to see his accountant. It happened to be during tax season. He said, I don't have time to look at the business plan. We'll have to wait till later. My dad was too excited. He went to his friend, Rex Banyan, who was over the accounting at Rick's College. And he says, this sounds like a great idea, but you can only do it if you have a partner. I want to come with you. Let me run the books. You run the marketing, the promotion. Let's do it together.
And this was brick and mortar, like actual...
Yes, brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problem they came across was it's a brand new concept. The malls had never even heard of anything like this.
And was it sports memorabilia?
Yeah,
what was
so
it?
Anything to do with for the avid sports fan. Jerseys, hats, and T-shirts. Anything memorabilia, exactly right. No shoes, no equipment, just what you'd wear if you happen to be of course, I'm a huge Seahawks fan. So if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, you had anything you could do that you could wear or any memorabilia you
just
wanted.
go in there and to support the team. Just
correct.
Load me up.
Exactly.
Okay.
So he was trying to pick an area. So he looked at the Minnesota area and he flew back there. For this business to make sense, you need to be around professional teams.
Okay.
The more teams you're around, the better it would be.
Just starting it in little Idaho was not going to be the...
No, wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So he went
and
to...
he wasn't afraid of having something across the whole country.
No, because he had over 100 Diet Centers across the country. He would travel to see his centers twice a year. So he was on the road a lot.
All the time.
He liked it. So it was no big deal to him.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just trying to figure out where's the best place to go. So he checked the Minnesota area, he checked Colorado, then he hit California. Mm-hmm. Every mall he went to says, don't like your concept. We won't roll the dice on you.
Wow.
So he started in California, started working his way up the coast, got to Olympia, Washington. The mall manager in Olympia loved my dad, loved the concept, so I'll roll the dice on you.
Okay.
So we opened up our first store in 1987.
Okay. In Olympia, Washington.
So we opened it when I was on my mission. When my dad opened our first store. I came home and helped him open up stores 2 and 3. And then it just seemed to snowball after that. Once our concept had a good proof, the malls were reaching out to us after that.
So Olympia, Washington, this thing opens up.
Yep, it's called Capitol Mall. We had around a 1,200 square foot space, just full of, and a hat wall. We'd typically use one half of the store. We'd have a
Just
massive
for
hat
hats.
walls. Hats were typically almost 50% of our business.
Yeah.
And so it went so well that
People hadn't seen this.
no,
there weren't places
no,
that they
and they were
could get
excited about it.
this. Yeah, great.
And what's interesting, my dad's partner's wife was buying the product. So you're talking about a 60-something-year-old lady, not a clue about sports, and because it was so new and hot, it didn't even matter what the designs were, people were buying it. So it was super cool how that process worked.
Yeah, great. So then it just kind of snowballed.
So it snowballed from that. So I came home from my mission. I wanted to get a marketing degree, and I wanted to go straight into business. My dad kept saying, "No, you're not. You're going to go work someplace else first."
Yes.
And I says, "No, this is what I want to do. I'm all in." So anyway, I got a marketing degree from Utah State in 1993, and I went straight to Seattle from that point on. But in between going to school, I was helping with the stores. I'd go help with a new opening or whatever it might have been. When I came on board, I opened our 7th store. So we'd built 6 up until that point, and I opened up our 7th store in Kitsap, Washington.
Okay.
So we'd actually bought it from an existing owner that we were kind of expanding up there, and he wanted out, and it was a good opportunity for us to pick that store up. And then from that moment on, it just seemed to go up from there. The issue I always had is you don't want to rise in an organization because your dad's the boss.
Yeah, right.
Does that make sense?
That nepotism thing.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. And so my brother came on board 3 years prior. He was an accountant in Texas, and we were having so much theft problems. My dad, we're having trouble trusting people up there.
That hat wall was getting pilfered,
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And a few other things. So anyway, my brother came on board 3 years earlier, and he was up there running the stores and then I came on board. Then I opened up the store 7, and then I turned that store into our number 1 store within 3 months. And they moved me to the next store.
So let me just stop you there for a second. Do you feel like you were just wired for this? I mean, this entrepreneurial bug, this...
Well, for sure. I like people. I like sales. And so I had no problem talking to somebody when they came in the door. And that was probably the biggest thing that I had to get that with all of my employees is that it's all about opening up to that customer coming in. You got to break that barrier. Most people, when you go into a mall or into any store, we're afraid of the salesperson because they're going to
push
something on you.
Sure.
And so you've got to start out your conversation with not what are you looking for, what brings you in today, just something outside of, what's the weather like, or what's your favorite team. That's the fun thing about our business is that we're talking about fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, hey, did you see the game last night? We could talk about the national championship game last night that just happened is what was fun about the business.
Yeah.
You get the customer talking to you, they're now comfortable being in your store. Okay, then it's easy then to figure out, okay, what is your favorite team? Oh, by the way, do you know we just got a brand new hat in that just came for that team? This is the hat that the quarterback's going to be wearing on the sidelines this year.
Yeah.
So it kind of made it fun to be able to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, and that just pretty much came natural to you.
For me, it did, yes.
Yeah. Did you have to train other people to be salespeople?
Oh, for sure. So every time you're a store manager and when you oversaw the stores, that's we did sales training all the time, just trying to get them to open up, go through the proper, I call the 7 steps of selling, helping them get through those steps and breaking down any barriers they might have, find out what their needs are, and then continue to show them product until they tell you that's not enough. Oftentimes we'll sell one item and they think that's enough. The customers are willing to buy. They came into your store for a reason.
Yeah, right. They actually walked in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to use the example of an exotic fish shop. You don't go walk into an exotic fish shop if you're not interested in their product.
Right.
No different than ours. They didn't walk in our store just for the heck of it. There's something in there that's interested that brought them in.
Yeah. So that's the first barrier that you've already broken down.
For sure.
Yeah.
And because we paid high rent in malls, we didn't advertise. That was our advertisement.
Okay.
We figured we already had the customer in the mall. We just need to get them in our stores.
Got it.
So we do our very best with our window displays, with our hat walls to attract them as they walk by our store to get them to come in our space.
Yeah. Yeah. And it worked.
It worked. I worked.
Worked so much that you were the top producer of the company.
Yeah, and I don't know, because I had the drive and I wanted to impress my dad and my dad's business partner, whatever it might have been.
Sure.
Probably the hardest part was I came on board with a guy that had already been working for us for 4 years.
Oh.
So he's already thinking he's tearing up.
Yeah.
Where, my dad would always say, no matter what the issue is, blood's thicker than water. Mm-hmm. My role was going to eventually be over him, but I wanted to prove it to the rest of the employees. I didn't want anybody else that worked for us to think I got my position because I'm
of your dad.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's always a challenge in a family business. For
sure.
My husband and I have a family business. We're third generation owners. Our boys are looking to take over the business, and they've had to kind of learn and be taught from the ground up. And you really want that, to have the respect from the other people in the organization. For
sure. So it was interesting. As they moved me from store to store to store, it became the number one store in the company every single time. And they all want to know what I was doing different that took a store that was 4th or 5th or 6th in the organization to number one. And it was simply just making sure you're working with your employees. Your employees make a big difference. You got to make sure they understand how important they are, and that you're praising them, and you're talking them up, and you're building that excitement within, saying, hey, we just passed the other store. We're close to being the number one store.
Yeah.
So,
did you get bored?
You know what? I didn't get bored. They were moving me around the first year so much. So I ended up in Kennewick, Washington for a year, and of course we ended with number one store. Did super good. And then my dad's business partner went to be the accountant at the Jerusalem Center. And so we figured it was a perfect time to buy him out.
Yeah, right.
So my dad bought him out that time, and since he was the accountant, he brought my brother from Washington back to Rexburg to run all of our books for us.
To be the accountant.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So my brother stayed up in Seattle for about 3 years, and then went back there to run the books. My dad never was in Seattle. He probably came every 3 months. He was on the road all the time, wanted to see the stores, and he'd come up there all the time. So Rod moved back to Rexburg then, and I stayed up in Seattle. I moved from Kennewick back to Tacoma. At that point, I then took over all operations and purchasing for the stores. I was buying all the product at the same time.
Did you have a family you were dragging around all this time?
Just my wife. We had our first child when we were in the Tacoma area.
Yeah.
So.
And what did she think about all of this change?
Well, her family was from Enumclaw, so that's right nearby. So I took her back home. So she was all excited, even though in the back of her head, I think she knew I always wanted to get back to Rexburg. I'm a Rexburg boy. She was going to end up in
cold Rexburg, huh?
For sure. So we were up there for almost 9 years, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. By the time I finally said, you know what, I think we can make this all work from Rexburg.
And she's like, dang, okay, I'll go back.
And by the way, that's probably one of the... I talk about any mistakes I made in marriage. I went to her and told her we were moving back to Rexburg in January instead of saying, would you like to move?
Oh, yeah.
You should never tell. This should be a conversation you have together, and you come up with that decision together. But
how'd you weather that one?
I was in the doghouse for that one there. That cost me a Thomas Kincaid painting. So.
Well, totally worth it. So congratulations to your wife for winning that battle.
So it was fun.
In a way.
Good. Yeah.
I guess you both came out winners.
Right. It was super good. And so at that time, we just had our third son. We packed up and moved to Rexburg.
So I think you were kind of talking to me a little bit that there was also a yogurt business in Seattle. So did this happen at the same time?
For sure. So that actually happened later. So to back up just a second, for me to be able to make Rexburg work, we had to hire the right people.
Yeah.
It took me 8 years to get the right people in the right places to run the organization that I trusted, that I could be 800 miles away and know that things were going to go well. Mm-hmm. So in doing so, we had to let go somebody that was hired before I was even on board, which was a hard move. He'd been with us practically family, but I couldn't see the business growing with him in it.
That is hard.
And so I took somebody that was, at a different stage and brought him on board. Mm-hmm. So, and how that happened was we were able to acquire some corporate stores, and that's kind of how the name change came about. Corporate Pro Image had sold to another venture capitalist company that kind of ran it in the ground, didn't do very good. And so we had a chance to buy out. In doing so, they owned 5 stores in Portland.
Okay.
We bought all 5 stores from them, bought out of our franchise rights, and changed our name from Pro Image to Just Sports.
Okay.
So that's how the Just Sports birth came about.
Got it. And it is now called Just Sports.
So Just Sports, yes. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay.
And so how that formula worked from there, I was able to come back to Rexburg. We built a warehouse here. We used college kids. And we decided we would pay the extra money to double ship our product just so we could control it better.
Mm-hmm. So it came here, and then it went to
back out of stores.
Got it.
So you got to remember, this has happened during the 90s in 2000s, so we didn't have a lot of technology. Even our information with our software system, it would pull at night. So if we had bad internet connection, we wouldn't get our true data of what our true sales were the day before.
Goodness. Like, how do you manage a business that way? You just do it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're in the retail business. We lose money, which is crazy. 7 months of the year. There's only 5 months that we're profitable. Sometimes there's only 3 months. We base everything on December. So from Black Friday, Thanksgiving through December, it's 30% of our entire year's volume is that time frame. So we plan the whole year for those 40 days.
Is that the way it is with most like apparel,
Yes.
retail kind of? Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I don't think I realized that. That would give me a lot of anxiety to run a business like that.
Right.
But I guess you make it work.
For sure.
And Just Sports has been profitable, and obviously.
Yeah, so it was super good, and our paydays are when your local sports teams do well. The Seattle Seahawks went to the Super Bowl in 2005, 2006 season, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
You plan for that. Your volume you do overnight is everybody's automatically a fan.
Yeah, right.
Matter of fact, the Friday before the Super Bowl, they declared it Seattle Seahawk Day. Everybody used to wear Seahawk gear to school and to work. There's not enough products.
Yeah, right.
The business model is you have to be a licensed provider to be able to make team apparel.
Like the NFL from
Correct,
the night.
for sure. So our big reps back then were Nike and Reebok and Adidas. So they hold the rights to be able to produce that product. We had bought from every single person that had licensing, and we didn't have enough product to fill the needs.
Oh, my goodness.
If you're a Seahawk fan at all, the number 12 is retired in the stadium because of the 12th man. Our team put together a plan. Goes, why don't we just print number 12 on a bunch of T-shirts?
Yeah.
We went to a local screen printing shop, printed 10,000 T-shirts overnight, and sold them in 24 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
So it was super fun.
That was a great idea, whoever had that idea.
So it was a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely fun. Tell me a little bit about, so where did the yogurt business come in?
Okay, so when I came back and started, I moved back to Rexburg in 2001. So from 2001, we ran the operations from here. My parents went on a mission to India. At that point, Rod and I we'd been running the business ourselves, even though we didn't have a complete firm buyout with my dad. We ran it as if it was our own, with the intention that it would become ours. As I started looking at different opportunities and saying, you know what, I was always worried that we were only profitable a few months of the year. So I was worried about our summer months. I was worried about our early months. I go, there's got to be something else we could be doing. That, I couldn't be busy fourth quarter. That's crunch time in this business here. But what else could we be doing? And I heard about an up-and-coming franchise called Menchie's. Menchie's frozen yogurt. So I flew to Los Angeles to check out the corporate headquarters, and I really liked the owner, and I thought the concept was
This is food, though. This is not anything
totally
you've been playing in.
No, I knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
Knew nothing about it. I happened to have one of my key vice presidents of my corporation up there in Washington who loved the idea as well. I could only make it work if I had him on board.
Okay.
Once again, I'm 800 miles away. I'm going to see these stores, if I'm lucky, 3 to 4 times a year. So how am I going to pull this off without him being on board? So he came and looked at the concept, loved it very much. And then my brother and I, who've been partners on all of our businesses, I go, why don't we bring another brother on board? And I brought a brother and a brother-in-law. I said, hey, come on, be 25% owners with us. Rod and I said, we'll just take half the company. We'll run everything. Just let you guys come along for the ride's what it really was.
Yeah.
And I took care of all the locations. I would find the locations. And that's probably the hardest part of this whole industry, whether it's with a yogurt shop or a sports shop.
Is finding
location.
Yeah.
And that's how we grew the business, is by finding the right mall that fit our needs and finding a location, that mall that seemed to be okay. Prime real estate is so much money. So you try to, you got to be as prime as you can, but you got to realize, we run on tight margins.
Yeah, right.
So with the tight margin, it's super difficult to be able to, pay super high rent and not pull the volume to make it work. So that was always a big part of what I did. I negotiate all of our leases. Most leases are a 10-year lease. So, you're signing away for 10 years. You've got to stay in business.
Hoping that it will be.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's always the scariest part, you
Yeah.
know. And these leases are so difficult. My brother, who's an attorney, would look over leases and say, the mall could burn down. You still got to pay rent. I go, I know, that's how tough these guys are.
Wow.
So it's kind of, so that's kind of how we did it. And trying to find the Menchie's location, I wanted to open one up so bad. And I kept thinking, this location is probably only a B location. I want A locations. But this first store was phenomenal. We had people driving 45 minutes 3 times a week to come have the yogurt because they wasn't anywhere else.
It was so good. Does Menchie still exist?
Menchie still exists. There's over, I think last I checked, they have 400 locations.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's great. All over the country?
Yep. Yep.
But you no longer have the yogurt shops?
No. So what happened was, as soon as we built the stores up. As I mentioned to you beforehand, I had cancer in 2012, which was a big scare. I didn't go into work for 6 months. Things just worked out in that I hired a buyer to buy all the product for 6 months prior, or it would have been something else for it to happen. So everything fell into place. But after I came back after 6 months, my brother said, I kept walking by your office. I didn't know if you're going to return or not. So, it kind of changed the dynamic. I was still motivated. I was excited to be back, but something seemed different.
Yeah.
And the phone started ringing off the hook January of 2013 saying, are you for sale? Are you for sale?
The Just Sports or Menchie's?
Yes, Just Sports.
Okay.
And, I kept saying, no, we're not. No, we're not. And they said, can we at least give you an evaluation? It's not going to cost you anything. Let's at least tell you what we're going to pay you.
Now, why do you think that occurred? Like, what was happening
I don't
in the
know.
business?
I don't know. And the company that came to us was Lids. So have you heard of Lids?
Yeah,
they have a gazillion hat stores across the country.
Yeah.
So anyway, they came to me, and I don't know what the reason was. And then we looked at the evaluation. We're going, holy smokes, this looks pretty good.
Yeah, actually, then we might think about this.
My brother goes, what are we doing this for? We have all the stresses that we're having. So I negotiated a little bit higher. They agreed to it. And we're just about ready to sign the document when Larry Miller Group called. They own the Utah Jazz owned a chain of stores called Fans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They started out as Pro Image the same time we did. We were all part of the franchise. When we all bought out, they changed their name to Fans. We changed our name to Just Sports.
Got it.
We seemed to always have a gentleman's agreement. They stayed out of the Northwest. We stayed out of anywhere they were going. They grew their stores up to 100 stores at that point across California and Texas and a bunch of places. And all of a sudden they call and says, did we hear you guys are for sale? I go, yeah, I've almost got the deal on table.
Like we're tomorrow going to sign the papers.
Yeah, exactly. And they said, what would it take for us to get in?
Okay.
I raised the price. And I'd already, Lids had already told me we're paying you more than anybody will ever pay you. Mm-hmm. I raised the price, and they said, "Is this a take it or leave it offer?" I go, "It sure is."
Wow.
They go, "We'll take it."
So, how did you feel brave enough to do that? Because you knew you had Lids on the side.
For sure, that's what I was nervous about.
Yeah.
Thinking after I went through the whole process, I could have played the two together.
Yeah.
I was super worried that I was getting probably more than I thought we were worth.
Right.
I didn't want to ruin that.
Right. You were already pushing it.
What do they say? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Right,
I want to be careful about that.
Yeah.
And making sure and then I was super nervous going back to Lids telling them I just made another deal.
I bet you were.
And they weren't happy
because they were
at all.
like, and we're out forever.
For sure. They're mad. They're mad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we made an agreement with them. The takeover day was going to be October 1st. I was super nervous about. Our team was incredible back then. We had Russell Wilson, we had Marshawn Lynch. We were going to go to the Super Bowl. Yeah. And I told my brother, you know what? If we sell the company, we're going to go to the Super Bowl and win. If we don't sell, Russell Wilson will break his leg, we'll lose. So I actually put in our agreement that any profits in January, February, and March of 2014, we got 25% of it.
Oh, wow.
So my brother and I were able to make a super nice extra paycheck.
Because what happened to the Seahawks?
They won the Super Bowl.
Oh,
they beat
that was the day?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
So that tells you how crazy it is when a team wins.
Well, I'm glad you went along with the whole superstition thing, because that paid off for you to kind of work it into the contract.
Right, exactly.
I'm not going to totally jinx this, just partially.
No, I want something out of it, dang it. If they pull this off, I want something.
Yeah, well, that's great.
So I had my Menchie stores then. So we opened them up a couple of years before we sold, and my main guy that was up there running my stores, running my Menchies, went to work so Fans bought us out of Salt Lake. They took my main guy and brought him to headquarters in Salt Lake.
Okay.
So I lost my main guy running my Menchie stores.
But you didn't have any more involvement in the company. They didn't say you're staying on.
No.
It was your main guy.
No.
Okay.
So they took all my guys, all my employees, and that was the one good thing about it, that I want to make sure my guys were all taken care of.
Sure.
I had super good guys there, and the one guy that wasn't interested, the guy who I brought on as my buyer, I'd made an agreement with him that if I happen to sell the company, which it didn't cross my mind within a certain time frame, I'd pay a year's salary.
So
and so I paid him a year's salary at our buyout. So he was super happy about that. So that kind of worked out really good. But it was hard to run Menchie's from here, not having a key person up there. Mm-hmm. When I'd go into my Menchie's locations, I did all the background work. I'd do the build outs with the contractors, the leases. I really wasn't involved with the day-to-day with the employees. Mm-hmm. That was my guys up there that would take care of that. Mm-hmm. So when he left, that was a big missing point. I didn't want to replace that spot, and I didn't want to keep traveling back and forth for these stores. And so we just happened to mention, to the guys that sold the franchises for Menchie's, if anybody in the Northwest that's interested in we've already
We
got
have these stores.
I've got 9 stores already up and running. I got an extra franchise. We'll sell the whole bundle. And so a few months later, we had a guy come along, wanted the whole thing, so we sold them all to him.
Yeah, it makes sense. I continue to be fascinated as you're telling your story about how you did that to that level remotely, because this was before Zoom. This was before all the other ways that we could communicate, and to be able to run a team from so far away is super impressive. And so I can imagine that was pretty stressful.
For sure. And what was fun for my managers, every year we'd bring them to my cabin, my parents' cabin for, a retreat. And you don't get that in corporate world, and so that they missed that. As soon as we sold out, we got more emails saying, "Oh my gosh, we missed those days."
Right. Right, it's different.
Yep. So it was a different thing, but during Christmas and during the big sales, I'm a numbers guy, and I'd have to get those numbers through fax. Oftentimes they had to write their numbers down on a fax machine and send me over on a fax to be able to see what the numbers were going throughout the day as I'm tracking from year to year to see if we're on track to hit our goals that we have set.
Yeah, right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about what you're up to and how the challenges that you've been facing with that, and what you're doing now, and all of the things. So stay tuned.
Perfect.
Hey listeners, we hope you're enjoying today's episode of Entrepreneur Voices. This episode is brought to you by Oswald Service and Repair, the trusted name in automotive repair and service since 1939. Learn more about how Oswald Service and Repair can keep your car happy and healthy at oswaldserviceinc.com.
Welcome back. We're continuing to talk with Chad Erikson about his fun journey. One of the things I want to talk to you about, and as much as you want to speak about it, but you've brought up a couple of times that in 2012 you had this cancer diagnosis, cancer scare. And I think that one of the things I thought about that is how human that is, right? You're kind of 10 feet tall and bulletproof, taking on the world with all of this, with just sports and everything that you guys are doing. And then like real life hits you. So how was that for you, for your family? What did that change your perspective about this entrepreneurial kind of idea, this business guy? Like, talk to me a little bit about that journey.
Well, for sure. Anytime you don't understand the cancer world till you're in the cancer world, and then you don't realize it's everywhere, once you're a part of it. And, and you have a whole new family that you're part of when that happens. And for sure, it changed my mindset totally. I don't think I was interested in selling the company until afterwards. You realize, oh my gosh, we're not promised tomorrow, and it was interesting. It happened to be my next door neighbor in Bishop was my oncologist.
Yeah.
And he told me, he goes, as a doctor, I don't know how we're going to figure this out. As your bishop, I think you're going to make it. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing I went off. I had stage 4 lymphoma.
Wow.
My entire insides was chock full of it. They went, they couldn't surgically remove the tumor because it was intertwined between all my organs. So
it's everywhere.
Heavy chemo is the only way we got through it. So
how did you know? Like, did you just notice?
Stomach was killing me. My stomach was killing me.
Yeah.
And I never could figure it out until we finally decided to do a HIDA
scan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm losing my mind.
No, that's okay.
Anyway, so we did that scan to figure out, could it be my gallbladder? That's all maybe that was what it was. And, as soon as they put the 3 incisions, they said it's going to be a super simple surgery. They realized real quick it was a problem, and they needed permission to slice me open.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from that, it went downhill super quick, and it was a super scary 6 months that felt like an eternity.
I bet it did.
So
required
6 rounds of chemo. I had to go to Huntsman in Utah for half of the treatments till they could figure out how to transport one of the chemos to Rexburg.
My goodness.
So no, for sure it changed me. I came back to work. I wasn't the same. I was excited to be back, but something was different. You realize that your family's probably the most important thing, and I'd rather spend time with them than busy in the workforce. And so when that opportunity came to sell, I kind of almost checked out of almost everything. I think I told you before we started the podcast, I really haven't done a whole lot in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Investments here, investments there, help somebody start up, but no day-to-day activity for my part. Put some money in here, hope that I get some in return, some you don't, mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what turned that there. So
yeah, I imagine it really changes your perspective on what's important, and especially with running a business remotely. Like, you were probably gone a significant amount of the time.
Yeah, I for sure was gone. And when I had cancer, my youngest I got 5 sons, and I have a 8-year gap between number 4 and number 5.
Oh,
and so
great.
my little guy was 3 years old.
Yeah, oh, wow.
And so I was going to make sure that I wasn't going to miss one event of his. My older boys, I was gone a lot of their time, when they were growing up, and I wasn't going to miss anything of the younger ones.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So how do you feel like your entrepreneurial journey has affected your children? Are any of them entrepreneurs? Or do they look to be?
They do. I've got some summer sales guys that are out knocking doors, and so they got the sales. They've
got the sales bug too. It's
in the
gene.
They must.
Yeah.
And then my brother and I helped my brother's son-in-law start up a screen printing company. So we put money up into that, and my son's is an independent contractor salesman for them. So he sells for them, and so he's got the sales, and
yeah.
And I got a son who wants to be an accountant, so he somewhere got some book smarts that didn't come from me. But so
maybe your brother, right? Somewhere in those genes,
possibly for sure. So, but yeah, it's been an exciting run for all the stuff we've been doing.
Yeah, well, it does sound like you have had influence on other businesses. You've been a mentor, perhaps put some money into other businesses. Talk a little bit about supporting others in their journey.
For sure, but I think on the list you had Velocity Auto Parts or what's Velocity? Auto repair, anyway.
Velocity car repair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super good friend of mine. He wanted to buy the company, needed some money up front. Wanted if my brother and I would come on board, be a partner with him.
Yeah.
We took a small percentage of the company, and then when he's up and going very well on his own, he asked if he could buy us out. So,
you helped him get going.
We helped him get going, which was great. We didn't need anything big from that there. So it was really fun.
Yeah.
My brother was able to help his son and son-in-law start a wrapping company where they wrap snowmobiles and side by sides.
Oh, how fun!
So Deviant Inc., and it's been a fun business watching that happen. I think one of my biggest success stories is it was lucky. Matter of fact, that's what business is about. You got to have the right luck. Luck is such a big deal.
A little bit of skill, though.
Huh?
I think you need a little skill.
Well, for sure you do, but there's a lot of luck that comes along with it too.
Yeah.
But you did a podcast with Stu Kent with Stu.
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
He rented my building from me when we sold. And so he was our first tenant.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he came to us to be our first investors. And I just did not understand his business.
Oh, man, you missed it.
No. I still invested.
Oh, you did?
Just not enough. Just not enough. And so, at 20 times our money back, it was phenomenal. It was a fun deal.
Yeah, right.
And so.
Yeah, it's fun to see other people and be able to look at some of their ideas and, you dream a little bit with them to hope that it will
for sure.
turn out. But what an opportunity to be able to be in a position to support and grow people right in your community.
For sure.
I mean, what a privilege. I know for my husband and I, when we were expanding, we have an automotive repair business, and when we were expanding from his dad's 2-bay service station to build our first little 6-bay location, it was a private investor that helped us do that, and we would not have been able to do that had somebody not believed in us.
Correct.
So that's fun. So are there any other of those kind of things happening for you?
My neighbors are all been in the summer sales business my entire, we've been in the same neighborhood for 20 plus years. These guys are 10 plus years younger than me. They said, come out of retirement, come do fiber sales with us. So they somehow talked me into September, throwing on a high-vis vest and a Brightspeed hat and go knock doors in Palmyra, Missouri.
Now, wait a minute.
Selling door-to-door fiber internet.
So you now are you're a summer sales, fall sales.
Well,
whatever it is.
We're year-round. We're just,
okay.
we run a blitz model. We send guys out 6 to 10 at a time to a certain little location to knock doors.
Isn't that great?
And to let them know that fiber is now available in their neighborhood.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, so.
And so you're not doing nothing. Like, you've been pretty busy, it sounds like.
Ever since this year, they make me show up at the office at least by 10. They said they want me there till at least 4. And I'm saying, let's how about till 3, so.
All right, so based on all of your experience and knowledge and everything, what do you think has changed in the business world since the beginnings of where you guys have come from? As you look at new entrepreneurs, what are some of the new challenges that you are interested in them facing, and that's new to you?
Well, for sure, new to me is the tech world. I'm not that techy. It's been probably my biggest thing, especially after cancer. For some reason, I let that, got rid of my computer. I really didn't do anything. If I couldn't do it on my phone, that's what I use for all my technology.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of an issue there, but it all comes down to hard work. If a kid wants to work and he loves what he's doing, that's going to be successful. That's going to be successful. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he has his head on straight, and he's focused, and you can never get away from goals. You got to have some goals in your life, and they'll tell you over and over again, if it's not written down, it's just a wish, and I'm a believer in that.
Have you always functioned that way? Has that always been your mantra?
Probably up until cancer. you know, I'm not, when I say cancer changed me, for sure it did. You know, I was for sure loosey-goosey after that, if it's the proper terminology, you know, that, you know, I lived life to the fullest, you know. I had never been to kindergarten or first day of school ever, and there I am with my 5-year-old, you know, and I'm looking around, everybody going, holy crap, I think I'm the oldest I'm the oldest person in there for sure. And, you know, and so I want to be more a part of my kid's life and making sure I'm not missing any activities, you know. And so I had a complete change there for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I've invested in a lot of real estate deals, but didn't require anything of mine. You know, I looked at the numbers to see what they look like, what the returns are going to be like, and you write a check, and you know, there's nothing after that. You look at the quarterly reports, you know. So things like that. There's, you know, that's kind of how it's been. But you know, you got to be self-driven. You know, nothing's worse than forcing somebody to get out to go to work. Yeah, right.
Well, and just like you talk about sales, I think that not everybody is built to be a salesperson.
For sure.
Like there are
for sure.
Yeah, like there's a definite skill set that is in that. And that's okay. There's other places on the bus for them, you know, if we're talking about good to great kind of ideas. But you got to make sure that you're finding those right places and, that's
how my brother and I were such a great partnership. He doesn't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Lock him in behind his door. He's going to look at the numbers all day long. He's going to run all that stuff there.
Thrilled.
Yeah, and love that, and let me take care of, you know, talking to people and selling or whatever we have to do.
Yeah. Can I talk a little bit more about technology? Before you left Just Sports, were you guys doing any e-commerce, or was it all brick and mortar?
So it's just all brick and mortar. It just started. We were just starting an e-commerce part of our business as we sold. We might have had a year's worth of business underneath it, you know, as we're just starting to ramp up to get things going. We're building up our inventory in our place here, in our warehouse here in Rexburg to sell, and, you know, but it was just barely up and coming for the most part. You know, we weren't there yet. So
you didn't have to really face that, changing everything over to primarily e-commerce?
No.
Does Just Sports still have brick and mortar locations?
For sure.
Okay.
So my friend who never sold in Arizona, I think he's got about 20 locations there. He's got an e-commerce store that's doing phenomenal, like most of them are, you know.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, you know, I'd say the last couple of years, because I was always frustrated when the vendors were opening up an e-commerce store that didn't have a brick and mortar, because it kind of was a disadvantage to us with it, you know. Here we have the brick and mortar, we're paying the overhead they don't have. So it was becoming a frustrating part of the.
How did big retailers like Dick's Sports and, you know, Al's Sporting Goods, were those in place when you were?
Back in our days, it was Sports Authority.
Oh, yeah, Sports
Authority. Sports Authority had a big retail spot, you know, and what was frustrating is they would beef up their stuff when the teams became hot, which is smart because that's when you're going to sell the most of it. And then it became more competition. Here we're in the business every single day, bad years, good years. We're in it, you know, in the grind. So we always get frustrated when the J.C. Penney's would up there, you know, they'd open them up to more stuff.
Have all these sports
section,
things,
you know, so, you know, but it was just kind of part of the territory that went with it.
And you just rode that wave.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you realize, you know, that there's a lot of customers out there and they need multiple avenues to pick up their product.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see what you're going to do next, and, you know, be looking out for, if you're in Missouri. Is that where did you say?
Well, Palmyra, Missouri is where our blitz was. We've been sending guys all over. We
everywhere.
Send to Butler, Pennsylvania was the last one we had. We got some guys going to South Carolina, so we're sending teams out all the time.
Will you show up at one of those doors? Who knows?
I've done it.
All right. Do you have any other things that you'd like to share with the listeners before I let you go? Any words of advice or
just
great stories?
Dream and dream big. You know that? You know, if you can have a dream out there and you've got a pathway to get there, you know, it's all go for it. You know, I want my kids to have the biggest dreams possible and work their tail ends off to get to where they want to get to. Nothing's free. You know, you got to work to get there.
I think part of that, though, you have to be okay to fail. It's not the definition of you if you fail.
If you fail, you got to get back up and keep going and realize you're going to fail a lot of times before you're successful.
Did you have any experiences of actually not being successful?
Oh, for sure. You know, and to go pinpoint them, you know, I try to forget about them.
Yeah, sure. Because you just move on.
And that's what's great about it. You know, you seem to, and people I don't think realize that. You know, if you dwell on your failures, it's hard to move on and have those great successes that come along.
So dream big, just put yourself out there, be willing to fail. It's okay. Pick
for
yourself
sure.
up.
For
and
sure. Go
forward. Yeah, I think that's the way we learn. I think that was what this whole life was designed for,
right?
For us to just keep learning.
For sure. Get back up.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Chad. It's been
you bet.
great to be able to chat with you and learn all about your journey. And we'll be on the lookout for you in your reflective vest.
That's exactly right. Perfect.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Entrepreneur Voices. We hope you gained valuable insights from Chad Erikson's entrepreneurial experiences. Be sure to join us next time as we welcome Monty Spalding to the show. Monty is the founder and owner of Kettle Embroidery located here in Rexburg, Idaho. Until then, stay inspired and thanks for being a part of our community.